Well, welcome to Little Thompson Observatory again. We're extremely happy to have Cathy Haven here tonight to give us a little bit of an introduction on how to select the right telescope for whatever purpose you may want to buy a telescope. Cathy has been in business for over 40 years. And she has literally educated thousands, maybe tens of thousands of amateur astronomers and professional astronomers with telescopes and how to observe. She sold a lot of stuff. She repairs everything, anything that she sells. She's into binoculars, into cameras. It's really a little jewel, this store in Littleton. Unfortunately, it's fairly far away from us, but we make that trip happily. I talked to Dr. Stencil, the astrophysics professor at DU in Denver this week. We're visiting him. And he said, this is the best thing that ever happened to astronomy, having Cathy here with the little store in Littleton, SNS Optica. You need to tell me sometime where SNS comes from, Cathy, because I will never know.
The two original owners of it were S's, and so, and we had advertised internationally as kind of telescope and stuff, so we just continued. So. And I was one of the S's, but we married, so. Now
you may have seen their advertisement on one of the public television stations. She has that nice little schooner that goes on a little journey through the universe, and you recognize that. The observatory is very happy also to announce that we were awarded 2 grants this summer. One from Group Publishing in Loveland. We got a $1,000 grant, and one that we'll be getting in November from the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado, the $2,500 grant. So combined $3,500. What we'll be doing with that is probably to take the 18-inch offline sometime this winter, redoing the control system. The electronics are 1990 vintage, and in electronics that's probably 1890. So what we like to do is get that upgraded to at least this century's electronic level. Because we have one little flash memory card in there that has the whole program in it, and nobody knows how to program that anymore. If that one wipes out because of a static hit, we're toast with that telescope. They don't make it. We've used that telescope since 1999, since we opened, without any problem. So it's about time for that to be upgraded. While it's down for the control system upgrade, we probably will also send the mirrors out to be recoded, so we get a little better quality of viewing with that telescope. And during that time, we'll be using the 24-inch as well as the 6-inch astrophysics refractor on the west dome. We are always short for cash, although it doesn't look like right now. So if you like what we're doing, we have a donation box next to the back door. If you feel you want to support us, leave a little something there. We have little trinkets to give you in return. We have t-shirts, we have mugs, we have ball caps. So for various different levels of contributions.
What he's trying to tell you is the grants were not enough.
This stuff is expensive, yes. This also is a place that runs with all volunteers. We're always looking for new volunteers. So if anybody 16 years or older feels like they want to volunteer here, come right ahead, go up on the website. There is a section for volunteers, for how to volunteer. You can sign up there, and we will put you into our list and then do some training with you so you learn how to operate the telescope, learn how to talk about constellations, constellation walls, etc.
So those of you that are under 16, feel free to badger one of your parents or both and have them be a volunteer, and you can tag along with them. There are ways around it not being 16.
Yes. Yeah, we'd love to have anybody and everybody here. Anyway, with that little introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Cathy She's gonna show you what is good and what is not so good about some of these telescopes, depending on where you're gonna use it for. And then later on, I think she wants to go outside and show you with some of these telescopes what you can see. So with that, Cathy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for asking me to come up. I appreciate that. And hopefully my little talk here tonight will be of benefit to you. If you do have some questions, please feel free to raise your hands. I'm not so structured, I can't stop to, unless, and then afterwards, I certainly can answer questions for you too. We have seen through the years a raft of very poor quality telescopes that get sold in the department stores. And so I try to do these kind of lectures once in, especially towards Christmas time, so that people don't get fooled into thinking that, the telescopes that are available at the low-end ones at the department stores will do a lot of astronomy for you. There are some very reasonably priced, good quality telescopes that you can get that, for not a whole lot of money, but that will work very well for you. So this is kind of like why we like to go through this with you and kind of share with you some of the things you should look for. I'll start out first with some of the optics and the different types of optical systems that there are. There's 3 basic optics. The first one is called a refractor, and that's what most people think of when they think of a telescope, kind of stereotypical. There's a lens at the top here. The light comes through to a point of focus back behind. There's a star diagonal in here. That's what this little piece is called, so that you don't have to crawl underneath the scope to take a look through it where it focuses out here. But we'll just divert and turn the image to the side so it's easier to look through. The refracting telescopes, because it's a clear lens at the top, and you do need to have at least a doublet lens to focus the light properly into one point of light. And called an achromatic lens. That these type are going to be the ones that give you the best contrast and the best detail work. There's no obstruction in it. It's just a nice big lens at the front, and it'll come back down to the back. So for things like planets and the moon, double stars, different objects in the sky that you want the best clarity and the best detail for, a good refractor generally will give you the best contrast for that kind of work. Generally, they're 4 inches of aperture in diameter or less, unless you get to much more expense on them. And because of that, they do not do the real dim objects in the sky, because the diameter of the lens is going to determine how much light gathering capability you have. But because of the excellent contrast in a good refractor, you'd be surprised, especially under dark skies like you have here at the observatory, there's a lot of the brighter deep sky objects that you can see with a refractor. The second type is a reflecting type telescope, and this has a large mirror down at the bottom. This happens to be an 8-inch diameter scope, and you can come up and look at it later. If you look in there, it makes a good shading mirror because it's a curved mirror. And on this one, the light hits the mirror at the bottom, comes up, and the point of focus would be up here, but you can't put an eyepiece here because then your head would be in front of it. So you have a diagonal mirror down here at an angle, and it comes out through the side there. Because of this central obstruction in here, in the center of the mirror, it does cause a slight loss of contrast. So this is why the refractors for detail work and the best contrast usually will work better. These still work very well for planets and the moon, and they are going to give you, of course, a lot more light gathering capability with a larger diameter lens on them. So if you're particularly interested in dim objects in the sky, like galaxies, clusters, and nebulas, and you have a dark sky to go to, a reflecting telescope will do a very good job for you for gathering light for those very dim objects in the sky. Now, as I said, they still will do a very good job on planets, but not quite as good a contrast as the refractor. This over here. The third type of telescope that we have for optics is called a catadioptric. It's a folded optical system, and actually it's a combination of both mirrors and lenses. So this glass that's on the front here is not just a window, it actually has a figure on it, and it is a lens that does some of the correction for the system. On this type of telescope, it is a folded optical system, so you get a long focal length telescope. Now, for instance, the refractor has a 1,000 millimeter focal length on it. The reflector has a 1,200 millimeter focal length on it. This little short tube has a 1,500 millimeter focal length on it. And it doesn't just come up here and go to the back. This mirror in the center here is not a flat mirror like it is in here. It's a curved mirror, and it adds extra magnification. So in effect, this is a 1,500 millimeter focal length, even though it's a very, very short tube on it. This provides a lot more portability, and with the light pollution that is increasingly bothering astronomers and all people, we find that it's more and more necessary to get away from home to be able to do observing. Those that have a place where they can observe close to home and not have to carry things very far, they can deal with the longer ones. Although these still, I mean, the people that helped me saw, I had all of this in my little Prius, so so it still is transportable. So the folded optical systems are very good for portability. This one is another folded optical system. This one also has a curved secondary in it, only this one is called a Maxitoff rather than a Schmidt-Cassegrain. And the secondary is actually part of the front lens on this one rather than a separate piece like in here. Kind of just a little different variation on the same thing. This has a little tiny short tube, and it has a 1,250 millimeter focal length on it. So if it was stretched out, it would be as long as this big 8-inch over here. So again, very, very portable and very compact. And it works very nicely. Now, 90 millimeters in diameter is not going to gather as much light for dimmer objects in the sky, but it works very well for planets, the moon, and the brighter objects that are out there. Excuse me. One other thing about the different optical systems is some people like to put cameras on them. And this folded optical system here and here make very nice telephoto lenses for nature telephoto work or for photographing the moon. This one, as I said, makes a 1,200 millimeter f13 lens. This makes a 1,500 millimeter f10 lens. So if you're familiar with photography, they're not real fast lenses, but for wildlife, that sort of thing, the moon, your cameras, your single lens reflex cameras will button to the back of them very nicely with some optional adapters. The refractor on the end is a 1,000 millimeter f10, and that one also you can put a camp on. The reflecting type telescopes like this generally will not work with the single lens reflex cameras. By the time you get your adapter and the sensor is at the back of the camera, so 2 inches beyond, your focus does not have enough in travel to focus with it. But many people are doing photographs of the moon and the planets with just their iPhone held up to the eyepieces anymore, and it's amazing what kind of results people are getting. And there are some even adapters today that are made that will clamp around your eyepiece and will hold your iPhone so that the camera's right up where the eyepiece is, so you're not going like this trying to make it to go to the eyepiece and focus. So there are some things that you can do for the easy photography that will work for you on that. Is there any questions so far on what I've said about the optics of the scopes? Yes?
What is the advantage of a longer focal length?
Okay. The focal length of the telescope is going to determine the magnification in your field of view. The shorter the focal ratio and the F number is, the wider your field will be and the brighter the image. The longer the focal length is, you're going to have a dimmer image, but your magnification is going to be more. It's kind of like holding a flashlight up next to your hand like this. You get a very small but intense light. Take it over the other side of the room, and now you have a big circle of light, but it's much dimmer. So the longer the focal length, and you figure the magnification by taking the focal length of the telescope and dividing it by the focal length of the eyepiece. So you have 1,000 millimeter focal length. If you put a 20 millimeter eyepiece in there, it's going to be 50 power. If you put a 10 millimeter eyepiece in it, it's going to be 100 power. So whatever the focal length of the telescope is. Now remember though, the more you magnify, the dimmer your image becomes and the narrower your field of view becomes out in the sky. So you always want to make sure that you've got a little low power eyepiece to work with so that you can find something. Otherwise you're trying to look through a soda straw to find something on that. And I'll get more into the eyepieces after I talk a little bit about mountings. And then I've got some eyepieces and accessories and things, and I'll talk just a little bit about that too. The first kind of mount that I have over here, since we started with the refractor before, this is called a German equatorial mount. And it has a counterweight on it. And this kind of mount is set up at, you notice it's kind of at a weird angle here. And so when you take this out, this axis through here is going to be pointed like a North Star, because everything in the sky goes around the North Star. So if you set it up with that, then you can track and follow with that axis. This type of mounting, you do have your slow motion controls here, which are very nice, because the sky does rotate. And so as things, after you've found something, so let's say we're looking at something that's over here, and I've got it set up there. Now I can track and follow just by moving one knob here so that it's very easy to keep it in your field of view. This type of mounting also, there is a clock drive available for it, which is a little electronic device that goes on the shaft of the axis here, and it will rotate the telescope at 1 revolution every 24 hours. So it's not very fast, but you'd be surprised when you're looking through your eyepiece how quickly it goes out of your field of view. So the slow motion controls on this are nice. If you do want to get into longer photography of dim objects in the sky, there's a lot more involved, and usually a German equatorial mount is recommended for that because it'll track and follow in one motion. Another type of mounting is an alt-azimuth mount. So you have altitude and azimuth movement on these. And this one here is one of those. And there's a computer system on it, so you do an initialization on it on 2 stars in the sky. And once you do that, it knows where the sky is located with this computer, and so it can track and follow for you also. But it doesn't track in one arc across the sky like the sky moves. It goes over and up or over and down depending on what part of the sky you're in. So that is not going to give you smooth movement for long photographs. For short photographs like planets and the moon, no problem, it works really well for that. And for finding objects, the computer can do that, and when you're looking through it and it's tracking, you don't notice that stepping that it does. But if you're going to take a long 15 or 20 minute or longer exposure, then you're going to get field rotation on it and all kinds of other problems that won't work well for the photography end of it. But for visual use and very short photographs of bright objects in the sky, this type of mount will work fine for you. Yes?
What was that one called again?
This is called an alt-azimuth, altitude azimuth.
Oh.
Okay? So, yes. This is a battery pack. Okay? And this has a computer on it. And everybody says, oh boy, computer, very nice. It'll help you find objects in the sky. But on the computerized mounts, there is one disadvantage to them, and that is they have to be powered at all times. And they do suck quite a bit of juice. This one will run on 8 AA batteries, but the 8 batteries will only last about an hour and a half, so they don't last very long at all. So you probably will have to have either power pack or if you're using it at home, an AC adapter. And you can't, this particular one, you can't move manually. It does not have clutches on it, so you do need to run it through the motors to adjust it and move it to where you want to go. This type of computer, this one does count ticks in the motor. So if you move it manually at all, besides having the risk of damaging some of the clutches in it, it won't remember where it is because it doesn't see it move, because it's not counting the ticks anymore. Another altitude azimuth type telescope is this one. On the Newtonian telescopes like this telescope is called a Dobsonian. It's still altitude azimuth because it moves up and down and left and right. But it bears the name of a gentleman from San Francisco who was part of the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers, and he encouraged people to build their own telescope. He had classes where they ground their own mirrors. He used old port windows that were already partly curved, and then they would grind and figure them and then polish them and then have them aluminized. And he had big telescopes out on the sidewalks of San Francisco. His name was John Dobson, so the name Dobsonian telescope. And he would tell people, come look at this moon, come look at the moon, come look at Saturn, whatever. And so he opened up astronomy to many, many hundreds of thousands of people. And he's now in his 90s. Has he passed away? I can't remember if he's still alive, but he's
I think he's in his low 90s now.
yeah, he's in his 90s, and he still enjoys doing it. I know that he doesn't quite as much as he used to, but he's, a he encouraged a lot of people. And this type of telescope is very easy to use. You just push it where you want to look. You look through your finder and find it and aim it, and move it to different parts of the sky. Now, there's no slow motion controls on it. This one does not have a drive on it, so I have to kind of nudge and push depending on where I am. But once you get the feel of it, and it doesn't take long to do that, it's a very easy scope to work with. It has a lot of aperture, so again, you're getting lots of light gathering capability and some very, very nice results. And these are very modestly priced.
He's a relative youngster. He's 5 days older than my dad. He's 76. Dobson, yeah.
Dobson?
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, he's in his 90s now.
This one? Well, maybe I got the wrong one. Oh.
John
Good
Dobson.
news. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Got the wrong
No,
one.
John is in his
No,
90s.
I'm sorry.
Got
Got the wrong one.
Yeah.
My bad.
Can't trust them darn
Yeah,
computers.
no,
Can't trust the operator.
Yeah.
Couple of volunteers.
And then this is a little tabletop one. Again, it's a Dobsonian type telescope. You just move it up and down and left and right. And this one you kind of do need to have a table for, although it will, there's a camera tripod screw at the bottom of it, so you can put it on a tripod if you've got a tripod.
Yeah, the other one must have been his son, because this guy's 98.
98, okay, he's 1 year older than my dad, so, okay.
That's the right one.
So, right, that's the right one, right, I knew he was in his late 90s, so.
He just turned 98 last month.
Oh, really, okay. So, so anyway, these are some of the different mountings, and like I said, for very simple photography, any one of them will work for you, and, but like I said, to get into more serious astrophotography, that gets a lot more involved. Although the companies are coming out now with more and more video type cameras that are designed to go on the telescopes, that are giving you, faster times, and you're able to get a lot more with that. We do have some backyard star parties at our store, and I've got some brochures up here that you're welcome to take. This is our schedule through December. And actually, tomorrow night we have one at our store if you want to come down to Littleton. I know it's a little bit of a trek, but we get a bunch of scopes out and do take a look through them. A couple of the guys that work for me part-time do have some video systems, so if you want to see what that looks like to set some of those up, they have some of those there. Again, like I said, it does get a little bit more involved, but it's not impossible to do it. It's becoming easier and easier as the years go by. I don't do it, I'm sorry, because I'm not willing to sit at the computer for all the hours doing the manipulation and stuff later, but I don't care that much for computers. But like I said, it is getting easier and easier to do now. The old days of films, the exposures were so long and you had to sit there and guide yourself and watch what was happening and make adjustments to the motors during those. But the new cameras now with the digital have much more sensitive sensors in there and things are getting faster. Before I leave the telescopes, yes, Michael?
Couple questions. Can you give us some idea of pricing?
That's just what I was going to do.
Okay.
Just before I leave the telescope, I was going to kind of show you what that was.
And then the other thing is, you sell new telescopes, but you also have a lot of used telescopes in the
Yes, we
store.
do. We've got both. I do have a pretty good section of used. When you do buy a used scope from us, we go through it completely, make sure that the optics and the mechanics on it are as good as they possibly can be, so that you're getting a good quality telescope on that. Also on the new telescopes, our packages do include us. We don't hand you an unopened box. So every telescope that goes out of our store, the box has been opened, the scope has been set up. We check and make sure that everything is right on it. After being kicked off the UPS truck, they are not in alignment. So we have an optical bench, we align the optics. Even on the little tabletop here, it does have adjustments for aligning it, so we make sure that it's aligned. The Schmidt-Cassegrains, the refractors, all of them we do make sure are going to perform the best they possibly can when we leave our store. Start out with some tabletop versions. This particular one here with the long focal length on it, good for planets and so forth, runs $225. But they make a real little small 4-inch reflector that's a very low power wide field for scanning across the sky that starts at $125. And it does not have a lot of magnification, but for scanning down the Milky Way under dark skies, stumbling across all those clusters and nebulas and things in there, it works very, very nicely. And it'll go up to the one for $125. You can get eyepieces to take it up to about 60 or 70 power. Saturn will be small, but you can see rings around it. Jupiter's moons will be very evident, and the main bands across Jupiter can be seen at that magnification also. The 2 eyepieces that come with it will give you up to 40 power with the high-powered eyepiece that comes with it. So it is a very, and you can get a higher power eyepiece for it than to go over higher. So that is where we start as far as price range goes. Right now, my used, I have a nice little 90mm altitude azimuth refractor. It does have slow motion controls, but on altitude azimuth, as I said, you have to make 2 motions to track and follow instead of 1. But we've got one for $179, I think, is where my used stuff starts right now. We have a very, very nice 8-inch diameter scope like this on a very heavy-duty computerized equatorial mount, so that you could do some really nice photography through it with a few added accessories for your camera and a couple things like that. And that one used is going to sell for about $2,300 for my basic unit, and worth, what did we figure out? It was like $3,300 for what that would be new. So it's going to be a good savings on it. So, I mean, that's just kind of a ballpark there. And so, but we've got a lot of different things. The computerized 6-inch telescope here sells for $900. And I shouldn't say this, but if you're looking for something for Christmas, about the last 3 years, they put this on sale for $80 off at Christmas time. So we're hoping they will again. Like I said, they've done it for the last 3 years, sometime around the middle of November through the end of the year. So there might be a little bit of additional savings on this at Christmas time. The Dobsonian type telescopes, we have a range all the way from a little 4-inch diameter or 4.5-inch diameter Dobsonian that starts out at $290. A 6-inch 6-inch version of their, what they call their classic version, which is kind of their plain vanilla version. Starts out at just over $350. The 8-inch, they make 3 different versions on the 8. The 4.5 and the 6, they just have the classic version. On the 8-inch, the plain vanilla one starts out at, what is it, 415. And on that one, they come with a little red dot finder, which is very, very easy to use. And you'll see on these two the red dot finder. And again, it comes with 1 eyepiece. Then the second version they have is called the Intelliscope. This is kind of the hot fudge sundae, okay? They have an optical finder on it, and this one has something called an Intelliscope. And this is a computer on here, and what you do with this is you turn it on, and you line it up on 2 stars, and you say, this is Vega, and this is Altair. And then after that, you say, okay, I want to look at the Ring Nebula. So you punch in M057, which is what the number is for that. And it tells you, okay, you have to push it 13 units this way and up 6 units this way, and it counts down till it gets to 0 and 0, and you're on the object. So there's no motors on it, but it gives you the computerized help in being able to locate and find an object in the sky. The Intelliscope in the 8-inch comes also with 2 eyepieces instead of 1, and this one runs like $675. And then they make the banana split, which is the same diameter telescope. Actually, it still has the little red dot finder on it, but it's completely computerized go-to motors. One of the things that's nice about the Orion on their computerized telescope is that it doesn't count ticks in the motor. It actually uses optical encoders. And you can move it wherever you want to after you set it up. And because it has an optical encoder in it, like the Intelliscope does, it knows where it's pointing. So you can move it manually or let the computer drives run it. And that one in the 8-inch version runs about just under $1,100. So those are the plain vanilla, the hot fudge sundae, and the banana split. And basically it's just accessories because the 2 mirrors in the tube are identical in all of them. So. The refractor that's over here is a 4-inch diameter. It's got a nice heavy mounting on it, good slow motion controls on it. This one runs $500. And people in the club have been very, very impressed with this one. They keep telling me, no, that can't be the price for both pieces. It does only come with 1 eyepiece, but eyepieces are available to change your magnification separately. And we do have a smaller version that's on a smaller mount and is 90 millimeters in diameter instead of 102, and it starts out at $325. So that kind of gives you the ballpark price range of some of the things that we have. Yes?
Can you buy like the plain vanilla and then upgrade?
Some of the others, no. The classic will not take the Intelliscope. The Intelliscope will not take the motors, no. So unfortunately on that. Things like eyepieces, finders, other things like that, yes, you can upgrade those. But the basic unit itself, the mount or the tube, those kind of things, no, they're pretty much set with what they've got on it.
And does that one right there have a model that comes with like the motors and the find?
Okay, the finder comes on this one, and the 1 eyepiece. The motor is available as an option, and the dual axis motor for it, I think, runs, if I remember correctly, right about $139. So it's not totally outrageous on there, so okay.
So that would give me enough to like I could just punch in something and...
No, this you cannot computerize. This is just a clock drive motor to track and follow and turn the telescope at the rate of speed that the Earth is rotating. There is not an upgrade for a computer on this one. Celestron does make an 8-inch version of this on a computerized, bigger German equatorial mount because it's got a larger scope on it. And that one sells for like $1,700.
So the 4-inch refractor, that's a double?
That's a double, yes, yes. There are some that are available that are triplets now so they're going to have less color in them. You will notice as we look at Venus tonight, if we get out in time to be able before it goes down, or the moon, you'll notice on an acromat that there's going to be a little color fringing around bright objects in the sky. Some people notice it more than others, and depending on how your eye responds to light, you'll see anywhere from kind of a yellowish to a bluish to a purplish tinge around the edge. And that has to do, it'll be different with each person because each person's eyes will respond to different things just slightly differently. But the acromat will still work very well, still show you very nice detail. Like I said, there's a little fringing around it. The dimmer objects you go to, you will not see the fringing at all. It's only on bright objects that you're going to see that fringing. So. Eyepieces. Or is there any question on that? Yes?
Kathy, in a used telescope, we purchased a Celestron 8-inch, and didn't hear you describe that as one of the mounts. It does have a motor clock drive, but it has a wedge that has to be set up to our
your latitude, right.
latitude.
Actually, the complement of the latitude, because the forearms are going to point north, so that axis there has to be at the 40 degrees for what we are here. So the wedge, back to our old geometry days, the complement, is going to be set at 50, so that angle can be 40.
So I think we have the tabletop version
Yeah,
that he's talking about
right. One of the Dynamax there. That is an equatorial mount, and it will track in one motion for astrophotography with the wedge if it's set properly.
Okay, but it has to also have its plate leveled and then aimed at the North Star. And it's kind of a lot of goofing around by the time you get it all dialed in, so it does track perfectly.
You're talking to the world's laziest astronomer. Which is another reason I don't do astrophotography. Okay. It's painful if you're going to do the long astrophotographs. So on a German equatorial mount or on your wedge, I'm the kind that go, okay, close enough, you know. And if you get it set so that it's pointed towards Polaris without sitting there being retentive about it to get it exactly on, the drive will work just fine for you. And if you're doing short photographs of the moon and the planets, that's plenty good enough. And, you know, this, one day at the store, I was busy and we had one of these scopes set up for a customer to give them a lesson on how to set it up and how to balance it and stuff like that. So Rodney started giving a lesson on it, and he was talking about, you know, how to do the polar alignment and how to look through the, you know, the hole there to line up on Polaris. And so I got done and I said, went like this, and I said, time out, time out. I said, are you going to do astrophotography? He said, no, just visual. I said, okay, forget everything Rodney told you. You go like this and you go, point it in the north general direction, it'll track just fine for you. You will have to make adjustments occasionally in declination on your fork on that other knob because it'll drift a little in there. But the drive will track and follow for a very long time for you with just very minimal adjustments at that. Now, if you're trying to do a photograph where you do a really accurate polar alignment, so you have to make as few corrections as possible. Because every time you do the corrections, that'll mean a little bit of maybe field rotation or something else on it. So you are very, very good that way. But like I said, you're looking at the world's laziest astronomer, and if it isn't really easy to do, I don't do it. So, okay. Any other questions on that? Yes.
Is there, like, I already have a camera set up, and I have like a spy scope that's got 100 power on it. Can I buy like a smart tripod for that setup? That would do the tracking and things like that?
Yeah, this tripod is available separately for just under $300, and then it would be another $139 for that. The only thing with that is, with this, if you're just going to do moon and planets and stuff like that, that'll work fine for you. If you use a wide-angle lens rather than a telephoto, you can do some whole constellation pictures pretty quickly and do that. If you're going to be doing long photographs through the spotting scope or a longer focal length like this, then you have to have some sort of guiding system to do that. This particular drive does not have an auto-guided capability to do that. The computerized telescopes all do and the bigger mounts do. But it gets more involved, and like I said, you have to be very accurate, so usually everything can be done electronically now. I mean, you make auto-guide or cameras that you put in a little telescope that's up here that you can put the camera into and then make the adjustments to the motors. But on the more beginning ones, they don't have all of those features. It does get a little more involved. And like I said, I know some about astrophotography, enough to probably get me in trouble, but at least enough to answer questions for people. But I don't actually do it myself, but like I said, Rodney and David are doing some who work for me, so we can, get some. And there's the Denver Astronomical Society is a very good resource. There's some really good astrophotographers in that collective. So. And I have some information about their public star parties at Chamberlain Observatory and then flyers on our star parties and so forth. If we got just another minute, let me talk a little bit about accessories. Finders are very important because trying to find something through the telescope with a very narrow field of view with a low power eyepiece is going to be difficult. So either the red dot finders that have no magnification at all. I have another target finder here on this scope which has no magnification, and I added that because I really like them. They're very easy to use, and that was an option that I put on this because the finder is more like binoculars, has a little narrower field of view. With the target finder or the red dot, there's no question. Once you line the two of them up together, then whatever star you're pointing on, that's what you're looking at. In an optical finder with a little more magnification, you say, okay, is this upside down or is it right side up? Is it that star or is it that star? So that's why I put the target finder on this one. So those are the different kinds, although you can see a lot of objects in the optical finder when you're looking for it. So things like M13 or the Andromeda Galaxy will actually show up as a smudge in the finder scope, where you won't be able to see it unless you're under very dark skies naked eye through the other finders. Eyepieces are available in all different kinds of price ranges and sizes. We've come, in the last few years, Orion has come up with a very reasonably priced series of eyepieces called their Expanse eyepieces. And these have a little wider field of view than normal. And this is a 10mm eyepiece in the old traditional style. You see that the hole is kind of small to look through. The Expanse eyepieces have very large ones to look through and a wider field of view. So they're very user-friendly, and especially if many people are here. Or if you wear glasses, it's easier to look through something that has a larger diameter lens to look through. These sell for $68, so they're not outrageously priced. And we have some other much more exotic eyepieces. I have eyepieces up to $1,000 a piece, so you can go crazy when you get some really fantastic ones. But these we have been really pleased with at a very modest price and the ease of use of them. So, and at the store we have all kinds of different eyepieces and so forth that can be used. As I said before, the eyepiece is what's going to determine the magnification. You take the focal length of the telescope, divided by the focal length of the eyepiece, and that's your power. So the bigger the number on the eyepiece, the lower the power. Most people look at them and think just the opposite, but because you're dividing by that number, the bigger number you divide by, the smaller answer you get. So. You always want to make sure that you have at least one eyepiece in the 20 to 25 or 30mm range. That's going to be your low power eyepiece so you can locate something in the sky. It becomes very frustrating to have a narrow field of view and high power when you're trying to locate and find something that's new. Another thing that I'll be using tonight is we do have filters, and I have a little thing of filters here. And there's the different colors. I'll happen to like an orange filter on the moon. I think that's very pleasing and works very well. And in fact, When last said and young at the observatory there from the Dow, there's my lunch filter on my low-power eyepiece yet, so. And this is going to give more contrast besides cutting some of the glare. Or you can use just a neutral denser filter. Like I said, I've got a couple of filters and stuff, and we'll be putting some on some of these. Another thing that's very good is to have something to help you find objects in the sky. I mean, people today have a lot of different programs that they have on their iPhones and iPads and everything like that. Small Safari is a very good one for some of the Mac products. And they are very good. This star chart is one that I particularly like. You've got your planisphere on the front so you can set your date on your time. And then this is north, you hold it over your head like so, and it'll show you what constellations are up early in the evening, or late in the evening and early morning sky, depending on where you set it. It's a good reference to get you started. And I'm kind of a star hopper. I like to just, look and find things by going off the different patterns in the sky. This does have on the inside 2 charts for each season. The first chart, starts at Polaris, the North Star, and goes to overhead. The second chart starts at overhead and goes to the south horizon. And each constellation that's up in the early evening of that season is discussed and gives you a list of different things that you want to look at with some description on it. So I find this to be very helpful. Other than the little tabletop and some of the most basic beginning telescopes in our packages starting at about the $300 range, I always include this in my package. I feel that it's a very great benefit to people. It's something that I've found very useful over the years. And I think it's important for people to have because of all the extra information that's given in this. Other than that, it's clear, so maybe we should go outside and take a look and see what this goes. Unless anybody has questions.
Kathy, a real quick one. When I first was looking at telescopes, I had read that people should not buy a telescope at the same place they sell socks. However, I asked one of your assistants one time whether socks were sold at your shop, and she sheepishly said, well, there were some really cute socks that were sold a couple years ago. They had constellations. Can you tell us just in a moment about the socks that were sold at your shop?
There's a company that makes socks that has birds and dogs and horses and rabbits and everything else. And they made 2 pairs of socks that had constellations or galaxies on them. And so, but I've been having trouble getting those from them again. So, one other last comment is you do want to make sure that your telescope has a very stable mounting to it. If it weakens at all, it's going to be extremely problematic. And we are very picky what we carry at our store. In fact, Celestron makes an 8-inch version of this scope instead of the 6-inch, and I won't sell it. It's on the same small arm and same small tripod this is on, and it is too wobbly. It does not work well. So I do have several telescopes that are out there that I won't sell, even though I carry a lot of the other things in the manufacturer's line, because I do not want my customers to be unhappy. Thank you very much.
Cathy will set up a couple of her telescopes outside, probably either on this side or that side of the building. In the meantime, while she is setting up, you can either go look at some of the big stones here, or you can giggle around